An interracial couple claims they were racially profiled on a flight to their honeymoon, and now they're filing a lawsuit accusing American Airlines of discriminating against them. Their attorney is going to join me to give some more insight into this new federal lawsuit. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. In September of 2022, a couple just married were headed from Arizona to Miami, Florida for their honeymoon. Should be a happy time, right? But they say the excitement that they were subjected to was not the fun in the sun that they had planned. Instead, they argued that the airline racially profiled them and then accused them of human trafficking without any sort of investigation. We're talking about 63-year-old Anthony Williams, who is a retired black officer, and his wife, 34-year-old Katerina Shishulka, is a white woman from Russia. And the couple filed a federal lawsuit against multiple entities in the Southern District of Florida earlier this month. The civil complaint names several individuals and groups as defendants. We have American Airlines Group, fellow passenger Peter Sals, American Airlines employees Michael Wilfong and Angel Rodriguez, John Doe, who's believed to have been the captain of the plane, and John Does 2 through 10. That is people who may have been involved in the decision-making here somehow that could be identified down the road if the litigation continues. But Williams told The Independent, quote, "There was nothing in our interactions the entire flight that would be indicative of somebody who was being held against their will. We were just two people having a good time." In fact, the lawsuit includes a photo of the couple that they took on the plane. So let's take a look at what the lawsuit alleges happened, and then we have a very special guest who's going to be joining us. But the lawsuit reads, Anthony and Katerina were on flight number AA2408 with service from Phoenix, Arizona to Miami, Florida to go on their honeymoon when they were racially profiled and discriminated against based on their race by employees and or agents of American Airlines at Miami International Airport. To wit, an American Airlines passenger named Peter Sals falsely accused our client, Mr. Anthony Williams, an African American, of human trafficking his own wife, Katerina Shishulka, a white woman, and reported same to American Airlines employees. Defendants Michael Wilfong and Angel Rodriguez did not question our clients or conduct any kind of investigation, but instead falsely reported to law enforcement that plaintiff Anthony was human trafficking his own wife. Upon landing, our clients were falsely imprisoned by American Airlines employees who escorted them off the plane. They were made to wait confused and embarrassed as the other passengers deplaned and walked by them. And then they were questioned by police officers who work for the Miami-Dade Police Department and were detained, falsely imprisoned, questioned, and humiliated. I gotta thank our sponsor, Upside. Their support helps make this happen. And Upside's great. It is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, food. This is actual real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. Look here, I used Upside when I went to Dig for lunch, which, by the way, delightful. Delightful. Anyways, I claimed an offer for Dig on the app, paid as usual using a card, followed the steps on the app. I got cash back. It is so easy. I got 20% cash back. That's insane. And aside from Dig, you can also use it at places like, Shell, 7-Eleven, Taco Bell. It's just to name a few. So to find out how much you can earn, you click the link in the description to download Upside, or you scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. The airline reportedly told the couple to file an online complaint after the incident was over, which Williams says he did, but claims nothing came of it. So to dig into this a little bit further, I want to bring in noted civil attorney Jasmine Rand, who is representing the couple in this lawsuit. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time. You heard the brief description of it. I'm going to go into other aspects of the lawsuit, but what are your clients hoping for in this lawsuit?
Clients are hoping, like so many other clients that have recently sued American Airlines for racial discrimination, one, to bring awareness to this issue and to hold American Airlines accountable. There was a gentleman, a musician in California a few years back who was accused of human trafficking his own children, his own biracial children. So this is certainly not the first time this has happened with American Airlines. My guess is it probably won't be the last, but we're certainly going to do our part into stopping the racial discrimination that's happening in American Airlines and holding them accountable.
You're talking about David Ryan Harris, who stated that he was accused of trafficking his own children. He played guitar in John Mayer's band for 20 years, collaborated with Dave Matthews, stated he and two of his sons, Truman and Hendricks, they were met at the top of the jetway by an American Airlines employee and then 4 police officers after disembarking the plane. And then this flight attendant had called ahead with some sort of concern that his biracial children were not his children because they were unresponsive during an interaction with her. Really disturbing account there. But let me ask you this. You heard I laid out the series of events from what your clients experienced. What else did we miss? What else should we know about how this unfolded? I mean, I still don't understand why this regular passenger had targeted or allegedly targeted your clients thinking something nefarious was going on, and why it seems like no one was believing your clients.
Well, there was nothing nefarious going on, and I'm sure at some point during the program, you'll put up the picture showing how they were interacting during the flight. They were happy. They're all smiles. This is a couple on their honeymoon, right? So they're in love. They're newly married. They're heading on vacation, heading to their honeymoon. They were happy. They had positive interactions between the two of them. Those interactions are captured, on camera. So there's no doubt about that. So there's nothing that was really missed in terms of their interactions. We've obviously filed the lawsuit to gather more evidence and information about what may have been said or what transpired on the flight or what people may have thought on the flight. But what was missed here was missed by American Airlines, and that's training on how to identify race discrimination. When a passenger makes a report that's discriminatory in nature, accusing somebody else of a crime, they have a duty to be able to field and vet and investigate those reports so that they don't just go repeat to police officers something every single passenger tells them. There are racist people out in the world. American Airlines has to understand that there are racist people who are going to take their flights and behave in ways that are racist or make reports that are racist in nature. And they need a way to be able to field and filter those. And that requires more training.
You provide another example in your complaint. It says on January 5th, 2024, Alvin Jackson, Emmanuel Jean Joseph, and Xavier Veal were traveling from Phoenix to New York's JFK, when they were allegedly kicked off Flight 832 without any valid reason based solely on their race, and filed a lawsuit against defendant American. The case is particularly damaging since they didn't know each other and were not sitting near each other and were all African Americans removed from the plane. Then you provide a third example on February 10th, 2024, of Pamela Hill Veal, a 70-year-old retired African American judge who was traveling with her husband and her elderly mother who needed assistance on the plane. At the beginning of the flight, Mrs. Hill Veal's husband was asked to give up his seat by a flight attendant at the request of a white male passenger. He declined to give up his seat. Pamela Hill Veal used the restroom during the flight. During the flight, a flight attendant falsely accused her of slamming the door on the first-class bathroom and instructed her to use the restroom in the back of the plane. The flight attendant's demand was clearly for a malicious purpose and was racial discrimination, as 3 white male passengers had also used the first-class lavatory and the door closed similarly, but was not instructed to use the bathroom in the back of the plane. Approximately 30 minutes prior to landing, Ms. Hill Veal used the first-class restroom a final time, and as she was leaving the restroom, the same flight attendant followed her to her seat. After she sat down, he proceeded to point the finger at her, physically touched her left shoulder, and threatened that she was going to be arrested upon the plane landing. Upon landing, she was escorted off the plane and met by police who declined to arrest her. Jasmine, I want to go back to you. Has American Airlines responded to these incidents? Have they said, look, it's being misinterpreted, what is actually going on? Because you have isolated certain instances where there is this troubling behavior directed towards a particular class of individuals, or particular race of individuals. And I'm sure American would say, look, every day we have to deal with issues on our planes. Every day we have problems with passengers. You're just cherry picking certain people at certain times. What's your response to that?
American Airlines has provided no meaningful response to Mr. Williams. They have not even responded to my office at all. I've been working on that case for probably 1.5 to 2 years. And we tried to engage them, tried to have a meaningful discussion with them prior to actually filing a lawsuit. But when the other party just refuses to respond, at some point you just have to move forward and pursue the litigation. I also represent Judge Hill Veal in her case against American Airlines, another egregious act that we are preparing and planning to file lawsuit on soon. Again, I've come on board almost a year ago with her lawsuit, sent out a notice of representation, reached out to attorneys with their firm, and have had no meaningful response for them. So their failure to just take any type of accountability for these instances of racial discrimination it's not tolerable. It's unacceptable. Telling an elderly female judge, black judge, that she has to walk to the back of the plane and use the bathroom at the back of the plane. I mean, that is like Rosa Parks type language, right? Like we would think at this point in our country, African Americans have the right to take a seat and sit at their seat, right alongside their white passengers. So it's just reprehensible that they would allow an employee to say that to a judge, call the police on her, have her detained. The police, by the way, thought this was absolutely egregious. They did not arrest her. But to have her humiliated, have people, walking by, seeing this prominent judge in Chicago, questioned by police, it's really damaging emotionally for those people, can be damaging to their professions and their careers. And American Airlines is just not holding their employees accountable. They're accountable as a corporation.
So talk to me about, you file for different causes of action that you're suing for in this complaint regarding this couple, your clients. First one is for race discrimination against only American Airlines. Talk to us about what that cause of action is, what you have to do to prove it, and how you intend to prove it.
So the cause of action that I think really has the most power within our legal system for these type of race discrimination cases, it's actually not race discrimination in a public accommodation or on a plane. That cause of action, from a legal perspective, they don't have a lot of teeth. They give you the right to injunctive relief, meaning you can force the airline to allow that passenger to return and take a seat on the plane, but you're not able to recover damages under those causes of action. So my favorite kind of tool of the trade is to sue under race discrimination in contract. And the contract is actually the plane ticket, or if you're going to a hotel, your contract is the purchase for the room that night, or if you're going to a movie theater, your contract is the purchase of the movie ticket. And once you enter into a contractual relationship with a company, most companies, or the companies that fall within under the purview of that law, have a duty to then treat you equally in the making and the enforcement of that contract, and whatever rights or privileges would flow from that contract. And if you're not treated equally, i.e., if you buy a plane ticket and you're not allowed to use the bathroom in the front of the plane, and you're told to go use the bathroom in the back of the plane, or you're falsely reported to police officers and you're falsely imprisoned and detained by those police officers, then you're not being treated equally in the enforcement of the contract and in the privileges that you should enjoy flowing from that contract. You're also able to recover punitive damages under that legal theory. And so that's why that is my legal theory of choice when going after corporations who are engaging in racial discrimination.
And you've also sued for false imprisonment against all of the defendants here. Talk to us about that one too.
So in terms of the false imprisonment count, the false imprisonment count is when a person's ability to move freely, i.e., ability to walk off a plane and move into the airport, is hindered for a certain amount of time and a certain amount of space. Hindered doesn't mean that they have to be handcuffed. They basically stop their ability to move freely throughout the space that they're in. So in both cases where my clients are exiting the plane and they're not free to enter into the airport, and they are detained in the area of in that small section of the airport where they're deplaning, they're effectively falsely imprisoned in that area because they're not free to move about the airport in their own will.
Okay, I see that. I understand what you're saying. You also sue for intentional infliction of emotional distress, which can be a very broad claim. And I was looking at the other count too. A big part of this is describing the harm that was suffered or allegedly suffered by your clients. And talk to us about what this is, the intentional infliction of emotional distress, and just generally, how are you going to prove that emotional harm? How are you going to prove what your clients suffered as a result? What are you looking for to prove that?
Well, I have a lot of these cases and commonly work with that type of a claim. And I don't want to talk too much specifically about any client's medical issues and respect their privacy. But in general, the way that you're able to prove those claims is when your clients experience emotional distress. In some states, you're able to recover just for the sheer emotional distress. Some states, you have to take it a step beyond that the emotional distress has caused a physical manifestation, meaning this person is now suffering from panic attacks or anxiety attacks, or they're suffering from depression, or it has caused them to have migraines or lose sleep or to throw up. And so in both of my cases, I can say with Mr. Williams' case, because he said this to media, it's caused his wife to have panic attacks when she flies now, and it has caused her emotional distress. Judge Veal has also I think she would tell you if she was on the show that she's also experiencing a lot of anxiety about flying. And she has to fly, often back and forth between Florida and Phoenix. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about intentional infliction of emotional stress. And the intentional part comes from, this is an act of racism. It wasn't an accident. They were intentionally misbehaving toward these people because of their race.
Right. And then you also sue for general negligence by a common carrier, and you also sue for negligent hiring, training, supervision, and retention. Talk to us about the negligence claims.
So in most of my lawsuits, I put a general negligence claim to the extent that they're applicable. In this case, common carriers, i.e. an airline, have certain duties to its passengers. And so the duties that they have to their passengers, we're arguing that those duties that they had to provide for basically safe travel of the passengers, to do it in a non-discriminatory way, that the duties that they owe under the common carrier were breached by the actions of their employees. And because their employees breached these actions, they are vicariously liable for the actions of the employees, but they're also liable because they have failed to train their employees not to engage in racial discrimination and not to make false reports of crimes. And they have failed to implement the proper policies and procedures to guide their employees for how to handle these situations. So those are the types of negligence claims that I'm looking at in this lawsuit and will likely be looking at in Judge Field's lawsuit.
What are you and your clients looking for in terms of damages?
Damages, we don't have a monetary value attached to those damages. At some point, when we enter into the possibility of settlement negotiations or mediation with them, we'll define the damages. We'll define the damages more clearly at that point. But at this point, it's really about trying to obtain justice, bringing awareness to these issues. Both clients, both Anthony Williams and his wife Katerina and Judge Hillview are really more interested in bringing the public's awareness to the fact that this is still happening, especially after seeing these cases happen over and over, right? I mean, my clients are constantly sending me other cases of race discrimination they see happening to other passengers. And I think that seeing this constant barrage of race discrimination cases against American Airlines, i.e. the 3 gentlemen who were removed from the plane, right? That is very, it's very triggering for them, reminds them of what they suffered, and makes them much more passionate about fighting to stop this from continuing to happen.
Is there an incentive then to take this to trial and get all the discovery and expose what's going on, or would a settlement and an apology from American Airlines be sufficient?
I mean, I don't have any authority on behalf of my clients to say that.
Sure.
If they're willing to take accountability, if they're willing to say, hey, look, we're going to implement this type of training and not just engage in victim blaming, then, I think we would be willing to talk resolution and an implementation of policies that are going to improve travel for African Americans and other racial minorities on the airlines. But if they're not willing to engage in any meaningful discussions about, policy reforms or training reforms, then, we'll have to see them in court.
Now, there was a response. So in an email to The Independent, American Airlines said that the company, quote, strives to provide a positive experience to everyone who travels with us. We are reviewing the allegations of the complaint. So you said they haven't really responded as of yet. When are they supposed to respond? Talk to us about next steps.
Well, I mean, I guess they have responded through the media to the filing of the complaint. But that's not a meaningful response because they have had this information in their hands in one case for over 2 years and another for a year, and they've never responded to me. So they and their staff and their attorneys are aware of the existence of these allegations. They are aware that these incidents happen. Both clients reported it. And the only time they've responded is when the complaint was filed and the lawsuit was brought to them through the media. So to me, that does not show that they're trying to make any meaningful reform. They're embarrassed, and now they're responding through the media, acting like they didn't know these cases existed.
Jasmine Rand, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate you breaking down all aspects of this lawsuit. We'll keep our eye on it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.